זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
What could this whole story about some spies going into the land and punishments and wanderings and some redemption and ways to remember have anything to do with our life right now? Well, hop in with me. We're jumping into the portion Shelach, and that's Numbers 13:1 through 15:41. Scoop my notes over here so I can see well. Say hello if you're watching live. Those of you watching live streamed, say hello, hello. I would love to see you over in the comments. It's nice to know you're not just talking to a green light. And those of you listening later on YouTube or in podcast form, please feel the love, say hello, please like, subscribe, do all the things. It really does support, and it lets me know that you're there, and it does really matter. So yes, something tragic about this story of people. Again, we're in Numbers 13:1 through 15:41. And again, it's tragic. Here we have the story of people who are liberated, right? They have been liberated and from this place of slavery. They have been protected. They have been provided for. God's taken care of every little thing they needed. Their shoes don't wear out. Their clothes haven't worn out. I mean, we're just kind of a year into this. I don't know about you, but if I wore my same pair of sandals every single day for a year, they would be worn out. My clothes would have been worn out, right? They were promised this inheritance of this amazing good life, only to lose it all because of the fear and lack of faith. Oh, wait. That might be my story, or maybe it's your story, but I want to just give you hope. There is hope. There is a generation that will rise up and that will step into this promise. And I believe that this happens over and over in our lives, that even though it looks like we may have missed the boat, we have missed our calling, we missed an opportunity because of our disobedience, lack of faith, fear, right? Fear and faith can't operated in the same place. But I think it's happened in our lives, but there's always redemption. There's always a way that we can remember. There's always a way that there is life. There is life. And I promise you, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. Okay. So how does the holy things now become, all of a sudden we're causing them to be profane? And how order is now turned into disorder? I mean, wait a second. Again, I think this is the story of my life. Those watching live this week right now, we have 2 days left. For those of you who are part of my pre-launch package for It's Not My Weed to Pull, the book and the workbook are available on Amazon. The workbook download is free at charlibrown.com. Remember, my name does not have an E in it. You can get the free download and print it yourself, or you can buy one printed on Amazon. If you purchase the pre-launch package in the next 2 days, I do send a copy signed to you, and you will be part of the live workshops I've been doing every night. If you can't make it live, we do have them recorded for you if you've purchased that package. So it's exciting. It's only $27, and you get a lot with that package. So, and you also get the ebook right away, so you can start reading. Also, I wanted to say before we get going is ways that we can find ways that you can find ways to encourage yourself in the Lord, in the things of Him, so that as we go through this, we can see how easy it is to get distracted by things that don't look like what we think they should. They're a little threatening. They cause us to doubt and fear. There's some ways to do that. And one of those I personally have found has been to make sure that I attend either congregational things or women's retreats. For me, I've got men, if you're listening, men's retreats, right? So the one I can recommend to you this summer coming up is Surge. If you look it up, it's Surge Messianic Women's Conference. You can Google it. You can go on Facebook and look up Surge Messianic Women's Conference. It's coming up this August. It is filling up really fast. It is 4 days. It is amazing. I will be there. I would love to see you, hug on you, and see you in person. However, the most important thing is The women that are there pouring in this, go in there and look at the teachers, go in there and look at the instructors, the breakout sessions, and the time you can spend with one another, which I believe builds you up in your faith. And I think we need to do those things. That's one of the reasons, in my opinion, we have the feasts and the festivals. It's a way for us to get together, and it's a way for us to encourage ourselves, because these things that we're going to talk about today happen all the time. It happens to all of us. So I'm curious to find out from you what questions came up for you in this portion. I mean, I've been talking to you about sitting in it, thinking like, what does this look like? What does this feel like? All your senses. What does this smell like? How does this taste? I want you to go through each section, not only from the point of view of the person who it's affecting, but what about from the people who are surrounding the outsiders looking in on the story? Who's standing around? What does this look like to them? It takes a little bit of time, not much, but just a minute to say, what's going on? What's missing? What's not happening here? And what questions start popping up for you? I really would love to hear those. Would you come? You can email me at charli@charlibrown.com. Again, there is not an E in my name. And you can, I would love to hear that, or put it in the comments wherever you're watching from. What are the questions that came up for you as you were looking into this? Because here they are, standing at the edge of the promise. They've been hearing about this now for a minute. It's the reason that they left Egypt, and now they're standing there ready to go in. I don't know where you're at in your life. I don't know if you are at that place where you're standing at the precipice, or if you feel like you're about to step into the thing that God has promised you all your life. You've been hearing all your life, this is who you are. This is what you're called to do. This is who you're called to be. But that's what's happening here. So I stand in that, listening as if this is what's happening in my life right now, and I challenge you to do the same. So you're standing at the edge of the land, and Moshe is saying, okay, it's time to conquer it. It's time. Everybody, it's time. And we don't hear all the details about what really happened until we jump to Deuteronomy 1. So Deuteronomy, put a little tab in Deuteronomy 1, 21 through 23. I think it might go through 30. But starting at verse 21, you're going to get a little more play-by-play on what happens right here in this instance. You see, they're ready and they're saying, let's go in. And they're asking, could we send some spies into the land? And so Moshe asked the Holy One, can we send spies into the land just to kind of check it out? Let's build everybody up. And he says, yes. Now we know he is omniscient. So since he's omniscient, he already knows what's going to happen. This isn't going to be a big shock when they come back and be like, I did not see this coming. I did not see them going this path. I thought for sure they were going to come back, with their big things of grapes and all the huge things of figs and pomegranates, and they were going to bring it in, and there was going to be a big celebration, and people were going to go in, they were going to battle, and they were going to get the land, and it was going to be amazing. And now he's disappointed. He already knew. And you could really sit in this just for a little while and think about the times when you've been told to go, and you're like, I kind of want to put my toe in the water and check this out first. And when you did that, it actually worked against you, because if you had gone in with all the faith and the promise that the Holy One had given you to go do that thing he's called you to do, and you just went all in, trusting him that he's brought you this far and that he's not going to leave you now. And whatever he starts, he's going to finish. And you just start blessing him and praising him through the process. But instead, you're like, I'm going to just check it out and just see. I'm going to do a little thing first and see what happens. And sometimes, not always, but I'll say most of the time, when you do that, when I do that, we stick our toe in the water. We're like, ooh, it's cold. I took my granddaughters, we take them down to the little creek. It's a river waterfall thingy. And one of the things that happens is they don't just run and jump in the water. Now I can tell that it's fine. It's not too deep for you. It's safe. There's no snakes. There's nothing that's going to hurt you right here. I make sure I take them to the place on the little creek that I know is safe. You guys jump in, have a good time, and they will back away in fear. They're afraid of the whatever could be in there, what they can't see, and maybe what they can see. They think it's too deep. But the big thing is it's too cold. And I keep saying to them, get in the water. The more you're in the water, you'll get used to it, and it's going to feel amazing, especially because it's 90 degrees outside. But what happens is there have been times when we've gone, especially in the beginning, and they just put their toe in the water or put their foot in the water, and they decided it was too cold, and they saw a bug float by, and they're like, oh, yeah, I can't go in the water because there's bugs. I can't go in the water because it's too deep. I can't swim. Now, mind you, I already know that this water does not go past their waist. I also know that the current is so light, it's not something that's dangerous. And even though they know, I would never let anything happen to them. I would never have that happen. And can I just say, when that happens, there's a part of me that goes, oh, don't you know me? I would never, ever, ever tell you to do something that would bring harm to you. I would never ask you to go somewhere or do something that would hurt you, where there would be danger, that would not be something I know you can handle. So when we read the portion, when we see that the Holy One, it says that his nostrils flare with anger. It says he was angry. Actually, the word in Hebrew is his nostrils flare. I'm thinking of that. He already knows this is happening. Just like a lot of times now, I know the character. I know what goes on with my granddaughters. I know that for the most part, if I'm asking them to do something new, that we're going to go through this dance of them not trusting me, of them being afraid, and their fear being greater than their trust in me. And I think that's where he was at. When it says he was angry, it says his nostrils flared. I think that's like, don't you know me? Don't you know me? So 12 men were sent out, one from each tribe. And these men that weren't sent out weren't just like, hey, who doesn't have anything to do right now? Who wants to go? No, these were leaders. These would have been people that they respected. These would be strong men. They went out, and 10 of them came back that had lost the faith in their ability to occupy their divinely ordained inheritance. Can I say that again? 12 men went out. 10 of them came back. They had lost the faith in their ability to occupy their divinely ordained inheritance. They lost their faith. Why? Because they were afraid. Again, faith and fear fear is not a fruit of the Spirit, right? That faith was gone. Faith in who he was, who he had shown them over and over, proclaimed his character over and over to them, to you. And now that fear took over, and now they are not able to occupy their divinely ordained inheritance. What have you given up to fear? What have you not been able to occupy? And you have allowed your divinely ordained inheritance to pass on because of fear. The result is there's an entire generation that's condemned. This is huge. 20 years and older will not go in. The children, I think about this, if you're 20 and older, you're not going in at the time. Those that were 20 at the time and older, 19 and below, they'll get to go in. So what does that make them? Anybody who's 19, it's around 39 and a half years, 39-ish years. So say 40, easy math. So 40, so they're like 59-ish years, 60-ish, 58, 60 is going to be your oldest people going in, plus Joshua and Caleb. Okay. They were delayed also. And I just have to say that sometimes you think that your fear only affects you, but that's not the case. Your fear also affects your generations, because even though they might eventually get there, they have to be delayed as well, because you relinquished and let fear steal from you the ability to occupy your divinely ordained inheritance. So what happens is the divinely ordained inheritance for your children and your children's children is now postponed. And they now don't get to operate in that either. Maybe eventually, but they don't get to do it now. They don't get to do it when it was ordained in the time that it was to happen. They miss out on all those things that are happening. I'm been working on something, as I'm processing through a doctoral degree and as I'm working in things about women in leadership and especially women in church and ministry leadership. When I was talking to my daughter about this and I was talking about the things that were disturbing to me and the things that I'm learning and the things that I'm struggling with, and as I'm praying about them, as I'm seeking the Father on which way to go, and there was part of me that was like, you know what? Some of the things that I'm finding, I don't know if I want to say them or I don't know where I want to go with this. And I know that he's telling me to rise up in something, but my faith is faltering, even though I know he's taken me this far through some crazy stuff, but I'm a little afraid. And when I said that to my daughter said, Mom, your granddaughters, I need you. Your granddaughters need you to fight for this. Because if you don't, we're going to be delayed that much longer until we get older, or we rise up, or we have the knowledge you have, or we have the position that you have to be able to walk into that. And that's what's happening here. If we really sit in this and we're doing the sight, what do I see? What do I taste? I want you to look and say, look at the kids sitting all around you. You're at the camp. All these children now who could have just gone into the land and they were going to conquer it. They would have seen it. There would have been celebrations. It would have been amazing. They would have gone in. They would have lived in this great land flowing with milk and honey. They are now delayed because of you. Because of them. Because of me. They're delayed. Father, help my unbelief. Help me in the areas where I'm afraid. Strengthen me and align me with what is your will and your plan and your promises, Father, so that I don't cause any generation to delay. We just finished, before we started into this, we finished hearing about Miriam. So Miriam has just gotten over her consequences for her slander of Moshe, right? It's kind of interesting that we see now the people, they're going to pay the consequence for their slandering the land. Because God says, go possess it. The people ask, can we put a toe in the water first? Can we just send some spies out to check it out? Moshe, again, thinks it's a good idea. God agrees. And one of the things that's said in Deuteronomy 127 that we don't see here is we see these distinguished men. We see these righteous and trustworthy leaders being sent into the land. And when they come back, what we don't hear is that they met with Moshe and they discussed the things they were struggling with. They sat down with one another at the big round table, but that's not what we read. What it says in Deuteronomy 127 is that they grumbled in their tents and they were questioning God's plan and ability to save them. They didn't, as a leadership 101, you don't grumble downhill. You don't run into the chicken coop and grumble to the chickens because they're going to freak out. If you have a complaint, the complaint goes up. The complaint doesn't go down, because when a complaint goes down, it causes confusion. And leaders, please, can I just stress at this moment, we see what's happening, what happens here. If you're a leader, the only person you complain to is the person above you. The person's above you. Because they have the strength and the leadership ability that God's appointed for them, and they should be praying with you and helping you walk through your fear, helping you process your emotions, and making you more emotionally intelligent so that you don't cause chaos in the camp. And because of the grumbling and the things that were happening in the tent and them questioning God's plan and ability, what happened was everybody was effective. Everyone was delayed. Children were delayed. They are called distinguished men in here. They all stand out as righteous and trustworthy leaders, but the land corrupts them. They go in and the land corrupts them. It's interesting. This is random. I don't know why I never noticed this before. It's in, let's see, Numbers 13, verse 16. In Numbers 13, verse 16, and I don't know. I know when I have the Tree of Life Bible, sometimes the scriptures are off. I'm reading out of the scriptures. That's where I'm at today. 16, verse 16, it says, and these are the names of the men who Moshe sent to spy out the land. And Moshe called Hosea, the son of Nun, Jehoshua. He adds a yud to his name, right? He adds a letter to his name. He changes Joshua, his name from Hosea to Joshua. Is that why? Why did he have to do that? Why did he do that? That there should be questioning. Like, of all the things that's happening right now, why all of a sudden did you decide to pray over Joshua and change his name? Remember that a name is a really big deal. So this should be a big question mark that you can make a little, have your journal as you're going along and be like, whoa, wait, whoa, what? Why did that happen? What's the significance of adding this letter? What is this? What was his name and what did it change his name to be? Why is that going to be significant going forward? Because remember, every time your name is said, it's prophetic. There's an energy that actually you're speaking forth life, that character. You're calling forth the calling and the purpose. And now his name means God will save. Why didn't he do this later before he handed things off to him? Why now? What do you think? Why do you think now? Tell me in comments. I want to hear some things. Why now? Why is he changing Joshua, changing his name to Joshua now? Before they enter the land, he's like, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm going to call you God will save now. My theory, my personal opinion, is the name is changed now because every time they yell out, they're not going to be yelling Hosea. They're going to be naming Yehoshua. God will save. Remember, this is a form of the name Yeshua. This is a reminder that he will save. So every time they were getting scared and as they yell out to talk to, hey, Joshua, oh, hey, God will save. God will save. Oh, I'm scared because I'm seeing these people are really big. Oh, hey, God will save. Constantly reinforcing if they would have been listening. And it was a I don't know, last ditch effort to remind them God will save. Their leader was going in as this messianic representation that God will save in the middle of giants, in the middle of the land devouring them, in the middle of all the things, God will save. Again, they should have come straight back and told Moshe, but they didn't. They went to the people. And they told them that no matter how great all this appears, it is way beyond our abilities. And why did they mention the Amalekites? I think this is a good plug for someone to go in and do some. We're putting together a class in the Rooted Cafe this fall for geography of the Bible, because a lot of us love, you can go back in the back of your Bible. You go back and look at your things. You can look at your little thingy jiggers, look at your maps, and you go in and look at your maps. And I would love for you to go in and look at your maps. And I would love for you to look at it. And I would love for you to see, where are the Amalekites? Where are they living at this time? What does this look like? Are they traveling? Because we see each one are sent to different places. We know that Caleb, he goes up and visits and prays up north. Hi. But if we understand, it's my understanding that the land of Amalek it's not part of the land of Israel. So why are they even mentioning them? They're bringing in something that they wouldn't even be crossing their borders. They wouldn't even be a threat, and they're throwing them into the mix. Like, oh, and by the way, we also have this because once we get there, they could come in and try to take over too. I mean, they're literally not just dealing with what's in the land, but what could possibly happen later. I mean, haven't we done that? I don't know about you guys, but I know as women, those are vain imaginations, right? When we jump into something and we're like, oh, and then what about this? And I'm sure this is going to happen. And then, oh, and this is going to happen. And oh, da, 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 da. And we go deep into these vain imaginations. And the vain imaginations are never full of faith. Our vain imaginations are never like, oh, and then we're going to get stronger. And then we're going to beat them. And then this is going to happen. That's not how our vain imaginations work. The way our vain imaginations work are always fear-based. We have to understand these weren't at the time, they weren't even a threat. They were a perceived threat. So not only was it what they were truly seeing in front of them, but then they were telling everybody about a perceived threat. And they're saying that the land devours the people. Now I've heard a couple different things and I want to share a couple of those things with you. One of them, which I actually really like, one of the takes on this is about the land devouring the people, was that because they're in this little protected little bubble, right? They're being protected. They have the things of the Father. I mean, up until this point, they've been saying, as you say it, yes, we'll do it. Like after the golden calf, they've been trying to be like really obedient, do the right things. Short of Miriam having the whole little, Lashon Hara, grumbling, her and Aaron. Other than that, they've been trying to be kind of obedient. So they're living in this little bubble. And what they're seeing is if they're thrown into this land, they're now all on their own. And that land will devour them, the ways of the land. They're seeing the gods, they're seeing all the paganism, they're seeing all the things going on that they won't be able to be in the world, but not of the world. It will devour them. They won't be able to stand firm in their faith. I really like that explanation because I can apply that to my life now. It can be the practical application to this portion for me today is to say, I sometimes can look all around me and the land devours the people. It's really difficult to be set apart the way that we're called to be set apart when the land is just full of so much stuff and it requires work. And I'm not in a safe little bubble out in the middle of the wilderness with my food and my everything, water and clothes, all taken care of and being provided for. But in the process of me working and doing that, I'm going to have to interact with the things of the land. And I'm noticing that as I saw this going on, the land devours the people. Now, another way to look at that, which I've read, there's sages that say that when they talked about the land devours the people, it was because they were seeing so many funerals. When they went in the land, they saw a ton of funerals. And when they saw all these funerals, it was freaking them out because they're saying literally the land devours the people, meaning they were burying all these people. And the sages who also say this as part of their commentary on this say that God was causing many of the Canaanites to die in the land as a distraction so they wouldn't be noticing the spies coming in the land. I don't know if that's true or not. What I know is this, for me, the first example I gave to you, it rings true to my heart from my life right now. And even in that is that I can imagine if I'm going to stand in the place of one of the spies, I'm going to sit in what it would have been like to have been one of the 10. And what would it have been like to have been one of the 2? What would it have been like to have been Joshua, where everyone's yelling out, God will save every time they say your name. And this isn't who you are. You have a new identity just placed on you as you step into this new land, and you've just been given a new identity. But if I'm one of the 10 and I walk in there and I'm seeing the idolatry, I'm seeing the paganism, I'm like, I can understand then why I would want to go back to Egypt, because if I'm going to go into paganism, if I'm going to go into a land that's cray-cray, I would rather go back to a land I already know how to handle and deal. Because this is a whole new level of crazy. It's not just the Egyptians that I'm dealing with like before, but this is actually, and in the Egyptians, I had even though I was a slave, things were at least kind of provided for me. But now when I go in here, it's a free fall. When I get here, I realize now, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to work the land. I'm going to have to do all the things, and it's going to be for me. And if I don't do it, if I don't work, I'm not going to eat. I don't have anybody to blame. I can't yell at a taskmaster because the slave owner is not treating us well, or because I have no one to gripe to, but it's my fault. So I'd rather either I'm in the wilderness now and I haven't had anyone. God's the only person I've griped to. And I had a slave master before, but now it's me. I have to take full responsibility. Isn't that kind of what happens when we come into the knowledge of who he is? We leave a place of slavery. We leave our worldly things. We accept him as God and Lord and Savior of our life. And then we have this little bubble that we live in, like a honeymoon stage with him. Do you remember? Maybe you're in it now, but you remember that stage when everything is beautiful and it's almost like he brings provision, really cool things happen. You have these miracles happen in your life. Maybe your perception, you're just hyper aware of it, but there is a season, that honeymoon season with the Father. And then it's time to grow up and step into the land. And it gets a little hard. And now you have no one to blame but yourself, because you're responsible for these things. Okay, he's there with you. He never said he wasn't going to, he said he was going to deliver them into your hands, but their perception was their reality. And in their own eyes, it says, in our own eyes, we were grasshoppers, like grasshoppers. Okay. In our own eyes, we were like grasshoppers, so we were in theirs. I love this for everybody who's, positive motivational speaking, or you're working on self, whatever. Listen, this is it right here. If you are how people will see you the way you see yourself. Do you see yourself as a grasshopper? Do you see yourself that way in your own eyes so everyone else sees you that way? Because that's how you see yourself. Maybe you take a step back practically and say, how do people look at me? And is it because that's the image I'm portraying? That's why they're looking at me that way, is because that's what I'm portraying. My mom taught me that, when I was young, when she was talking to me about dressing modestly, it was, you don't want to dress a certain way because you don't want people to look at you as if that's who you are, because it's not who you are. Whether it was you dress with you're in a different culture where you're like, at my time, it was like, people had big giant mohawks and, they're punk rockers or whatever. And if you dress like that, they identified you as that what you were. And there was a culture that went with that, right? That was rebellious. That was not the characters that my mom wanted me to portray. So there were certain ways that she didn't want me to dress because she didn't want other people to see me that way, because maybe that's how I saw myself. Maybe I was dealing with rebellion. Maybe I was dealing with my own sexuality or my own acceptance and needed someone to love me because I was dealing with daddy issues, my father not, being engaged with me. Maybe there was some attachment issues that I was dealing with. And so it was coming out in an outward appearance of certain ways that I dressed or certain things that I did. It's a fact that this is what happens. So however others see us, it's because that's how we initially have seen ourselves. And what they forgot was that their job was actually to stay to the mission. Go in, look what's going on so that you can direct people the best way to go. What if they had gone through the land praying and asking the Father to align them with what's the best path we take when we enter? Where would you like us to avoid? How do we align with your plan, Father? The job for them was to stay on mission. It wasn't for them to worry about what everybody else was thinking about them. But that's where they focused on how was everybody else going to think about them. I talk about this a lot in my It's Not My Weed to Pull workshop when we talk about control. One of the things that this is a big thing about control. Control doesn't look like some crazy out of lunatic person and aggressively trying to gain control. Sometimes it can control is rooted in fear because you're afraid about what other people are going to think. So I have to control the situation so I can control what other people are thinking. Whether it's what people think about my family, what they think about me, how are they perceiving me? Because apparently this is how I perceive myself. Do they think I'm not a good mom if I'm not putting the right coat on my child? And then I'm like yelling at my kids to make sure you need to make sure you're wearing because I have to control everything. My husband to make sure he's praying or raising his arms the right way in congregation, or he's doing something the right way, trying to control the way he's living his life, because I don't want someone to perceive me as a bad wife, or that we are a bad family, or they think he's a bad anything. So I try to jump in and control the situation. Isn't that what happened here? There was fear, so they're trying to control the situation. And then they jump in and say, let's appoint a new leader that's going to take us back to Egypt, back to slavery, back to the paganism and the things we know, so we don't have to like deal with this, back to where we're comfortable, even if it was horrible. But at least we were alive. At least we knew what to expect. Have you seen that happen in congregations? I mean, I've seen this happen in my own life, where I've went back to something, went back to, even when I remember one of the biggest traumas, church traumas that I experienced, when I went through my divorce and the church asked me to leave because of my husband's divorce, and I wasn't a good reflection for them. They didn't want a divorced pastor on staff. But what happened was, I then went back to, well, at least if I go back to the other way, I know what to expect when I just am not with church people, when I'm not with believers, when I'm out doing whatever. And I know then that's comfortable because I don't have to worry about them hurting me, because I'm so vulnerable in this situation. That's kind of what's happening here? If they go into this land, they see themselves as so vulnerable. And isn't that what he asks of us? When he says it's time to do this, if you're going into it with, if you lift yourself up, right, you're going to fall. He says, but if he lifts you up, he'll bring you before kings. I want to share you walking in vulnerable and humble. And I'm going to say doing it afraid, because you trust that he's going before you. He's already lifted the banner before you. I've seen this happen in congregations as well, when they don't like how things are going in the congregation. Maybe that they're doing some new things in a congregation. Things are changing in their congregation, and they miss how it used to be done back in the olden days. And they want it to be done that way again. They don't want anything new. So what they want to do now is, let's appoint a new leader and go back and do things the way we used to do it. Even if there's no fruit in doing it the old way, even if God's grace has left doing it the old way, they will still either break off and split. There'll be a church split, or they'll overpower and get rid of the congregational leaders or elders or whatever's going on. I watch this happen all the time. This isn't a new thing right here. This is fear. I'm afraid of going into new things. I'm afraid of being vulnerable. I'm afraid that if this doesn't work, we're going to look stupid. Where is he sending you? I want to know, where is he sending you? What is he calling you to? He already sent us his son, Yeshua. He's already telling you, I've gone before you and I've already saved you. Are you scared? Does it look really, really, really good to you? The things that you kind of feel, you get excited. He's called you to do something, lead a ministry, write a book, perform. Maybe you're a worship leader stepping into a position that he's called you to. I don't know what it is. These are just off the top of my head. Where is he called? Ministry? Maybe he's sending you to another country. He wants you to step into I don't know. Where is he sending you? What is he calling you to do? You're scared. And it looks really good, and you've got that like super excitement, but the failure looks bigger. The failure looks bigger. I'm wondering, were they comparing that to Egypt? Apparently, because they're like, instead of weighing out, what they were saying is Egypt was the lesser of the two evils. Nowhere were they weighing out the equation that God was going to lead them into battle and they were going to win. Instead, they focused on the two evils. If we go here, we're going to die. Let's at least go back to Egypt. We can die there in something we're comfortable in. Are your circumstances dictating your plan? Your plan for your life right now, do you have one? Do you have a plan for your life? And are your circumstances dictating that plan? Are you seeing all that he's promising, or are you just seeing the death and destruction? Are you seeing all the what ifs? Well, what if instead of how I'm going to die, I'm going to be embarrassed, people are going to, burn me at the stake, it's lonely in these areas. How about if we start asking, Father, how do I align with you? Father, up until now, like them, you have been so good to me. Father, I'm so grateful. Just like them, you've provided food for me. You've done everything. All I had to do is go out and collect it. Now you're asking me to grow up and have to do some of this on my own. You're going to provide it, but I might have to work for it and do a few things. There's going to be some effort. There's going to be some labor. There's going to be, maybe I'm to birth a new thing. There will be pain and labor, but I already know that you're going to be there with me. Moshe pleads with them, or for them. He pleads for them. He's calling back God's attributes to him. We heard earlier in Exodus, he went through the attributes of God. He left out a couple, but he went through the attributes of him. He didn't say preserver of kindness. That's one that he left. The preserver of kindness to 1,000 generations. He did not bring that one up. It's interesting to me that this is one of the things that I always wonder, that we focus a lot on this sin. I like that in this version of that I read through, that instead of calling it sin, they call it crookedness. The crookedness of the father going down to the 4th generation. We forget that his loving kindness goes to 1,000 generations. We focus on, we've heard that the sins of the father, the crookedness of the father. I like that because we think of the word sin, chatat, the missing the mark. It's getting on a crooked path instead of the straight path. If I'm on the straight and narrow path and I don't get distracted and go off to this crooked path, what happens is if I get distracted and I go off on this crooked path, you know who comes with me? My daughter, my granddaughters, and possibly my great-granddaughters and great-granddaughters. They may all be following with me because it takes a while to get back onto that path. Because it's so hard once you get off on that crooked path to get back over to the straight path, because you got to go over some serious stuff, or you have to go backward. It's a big thing. So he says that he's a preserver. We're told earlier that he's the preserver of kindness to 1,000 generations. But here we're just talking about that focuses on the sin and the crookedness of the father going down 4 generations. You see, I haven't heard, and give me some feedback. I hadn't heard that these people so far, they hadn't really shown any remorse for their rebellion. They might have been, I'm sorry. But they weren't really, there was no teshuvah. There wasn't like they were falling on their faces and they were just repenting and their hearts were breaking at their unbelief. But I'm looking at Moshe as a leader, as I coach leaders, and I'm looking this as leadership opportunity here. Moshe throws it all out to him because God's like, let's wipe them out and let's start again. My mom used to tease me and use that saying, I can take you out and make another one that looks just like you. You know what hit me in this as a leader? Who do I pray for like this? Who am I willing to lay it all down and pray for like this? I was convicted. Because as I lead a ministry, the Rooted Cafe, and we have like 50 women on our team, plus we have all the members on our team. Do I jump in and do I intercede the way that Moshe interceded for the people? I'm going to just be honest, and this convicted me that I do not. Did I today? Yes. Instead, it's easy as a leader to focus on the people that might not be doing things the way you'd like them done, the people who are acting a little crazy, the people who may be off the whatever's going on. And am I crying out to the Holy One to save them, to bring them back in, even when they're not repentant? What about your children leading your home? Are you falling on the sword the way Moshe is for your family? Are you fasting for your children? Are you fasting for your grandchildren? Are you willing to say, Father, please save them? Who do you cry out for God to save? Because you lead something. Maybe you just need to cry out for yourself. This is the 10th time of their rebellion, it says in 1422. This is the 10th time they have the Egyptians chase them to the sea. They had nothing to drink. When they chased them to the sea, they griped and complained. Nothing to drink, bitter waters. They ran out of food. They left manna all over when they were told not to do that. Gathered manna on the Sabbath. Water ran out at Rephidim, the golden calf. Rebellion against the mitzvahs in 11:1. Complained that the manna wasn't good, and they believed the spies' report. What happens to the spies? They die immediately because they were leaders and that contention was in them and it could not continue. It would have been death. So instantly they had to be taken out and dealt with. They didn't just lack faith themselves, but they provoked others to question God. There's a huge responsibility as a leader. To whom much is given, much is required. And if I cause you then to question God, not okay. This truly is a leadership lesson. So hop in verse 28 to 32. So we only hear about what happens to the men. I'm going to hop in and down when it goes. I'm going to see if I can hop to it too. 28. Where are we? 28 to 30. And 14. Sorry. 28. All right. So it's talking about what all the people are going to do, and he's giving them all the directions of who's going to get to go and who's not going to go in. I was reading a couple things and I just throw it out to you guys. They don't mention women. Now, a lot of times we'll say when they say men, they mean everyone. But usually they say men, all the men, and we assume the wives, and then they have families. So when they're counting, so there is no mention of women. So it is thought, one of the thoughts is that women actually lived out their days, and then some actually were entered into the land, that they were not held accountable the way the men were held accountable. I don't know if this is true. This is just what I read. In verse 31, he says, they will roam. That seems really mean to say when he's telling them, you will roam. Verse 33. It's 1433. It says, and your sons shall be wanderers in the wilderness 40 years and shall bear your whorings until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness. That seems really mean, huh? They will roam. But I want to remind you that if you reread this from a shepherding perspective, it was actually, he could have just wiped them all out, but he was giving them opportunity to be able to raise these children up properly, to get them prepared, to get the next generation ready. He was giving them that opportunity to take care of, to raise them up when the way they should go, so that they could send them into the land. This is that word, the wording there is actually shepherding terminology. And it was actually a way of protection, that they would not be left alone or without protection. Sadly, the grace, though, has left the building as far as them going. They will not go now. And then they're like, okay, we're going to go. We're going to go. But it's too late. Have you finally agreed to step into something, but grace kind of left around it and then it wasn't there? There wasn't there for that. That's happened to me before. You kind of missed the portal. I've missed opportunities. The good news is his grace is sufficient for me. And I know that he began whatever he's begun. He says, if he has begun a good work in you and he is faithful to its completion. But however, it may not be what was initially if you look at our paths, I don't know how your walk is or what you believe, but I think if we stayed on the path and we hit the mark, that there's but sometimes when we get off the crooked path, he's going to still work that for our good. It will still be Romans 8:28 and work for our good. However, it won't look like what it could have looked like. Does that make sense? Even though we know that if we are going to be like the 10 spies, he's going to still put someone among us to save us. God will save. He will still bring an opportunity to save us. We still have to choose to follow that lead. And one of the things that might happen is it may not look like it was intended, but it will carry on for the next generation. And I still have to look at this, and I don't really see, were they really, really remorseful? I don't, are they just sorry they're in trouble and they're not going to make it? I'm going to hop in here and just say one of the kind of cool things is that some of us who make challah for Shabbat every week, this is actually where this terminology comes in, and it's again mentioned in verse 17 to 21. It's talking about a portion of the bread is given to the priest. That portion of bread, and that's 15, 17 to 21, that portion of bread that's given to the priest, that word is challah. And it's that portion. So if you're ever wondering where that word comes from, it actually means the portion that was taken out of the dough and would be given to the priest to eat. And then we jump into something that seems crazy. Well, I want to mention that before that, I didn't mention this in here, is that if you go in and look at Numbers 15 and you start in verse 15, he says, "One law is for you of the assembly and for the stranger who sojourns with you. A law forever throughout your generations. As you are, so is the stranger before. One Torah and one right ruling is for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you." It's for everyone, in case you're questioning that. It's for everyone. And it's repeated. It's repeated again in verse 29. "For him who does whatever by mistake, there is one Torah. But for him who is native among the children of Israel and for the stranger who sojourns in their midst." There's one for everyone. It's for everyone. And I want you always, when you hear that, to remember that Jesus, Yeshua, was HaTorah, the word become flesh. He is one for everyone. He's for those that are native born, and he's for those that are not native born. And we jump into the next section. How much time do we have? Good. We have a little bit. And we jump into this man gathering sticks. And it seems crazy and it seems out of whatever, but how can this have anything to do with like this heart of the spies or what's going on? I think that what I saw when I spent some time like, well, what does this have to do with anything? Why are we just jumping into this man collecting sticks on the Sabbath? And what I saw was, here's a man whose heart is much like the spies, in that he's thinking, I have to do it myself. I'm not going to trust God's provisions or plans or his commands because I know better. One man's rebellion required the whole community to be part of this punishment. If you get that, what happens is, remember, there's a process that goes through, and apparently 2 witnesses saw him. He refused to he went through the process. He would have had to. Two witnesses would have seen him. He did not repent. He kept on doing what he's going to do it, and he was rebellious. And then they're taken to the assembly, and this is particularly punishable by death. And we see here that happens. And I asked then, how does this apply to me now? And I want to can I just be really honest? There are times when I don't prepare well for the Sabbath. There are times when I think, oh, I need to do this myself, and I will collect sticks. I don't know what that means to you, but for me, it might mean that I jump in and take care of some work, because I don't trust that if I wait until sundown or the next day that it'll still be okay. I feel like I still got to make it happen. Because if I don't do it today, I'm not going to be able to do it another day. If I work on this day, I might get fired. I don't know. You have to take that before God. But what I do know is this, that Sabbath, I ask myself, how does my Sabbath desecration bring death to my life? I feel it. Do you feel it? Do you feel it on the days when maybe you're not stepping into the Sabbath like you normally do? Maybe you do decide you take something on yourself because out of fear. He's not collecting sticks because he's being, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to collect sticks and I don't even care. I'm sure there's fear that his family is going to get cold. And he's like, I'm going to do this because I still got to do this. He didn't prepare. I don't know what happened. But I have a lack of life for the remainder of that week when I step in and do some things that maybe I didn't prepare well for Sabbath. I didn't get all my stuff done that I needed to get done that week because I made different choices. And then I'm not trusting his ability to provide for me. I'm not whatever. I'm being rebellious in all the things. And what I find is I may not be taken out and stoned in front of a bunch of people and killed. But what happens is there is death that's in my life. I don't have the same life, abundant life all week long that I do when I'm honoring the Shabbat. I have a lack of life for that week. So in that way, it does bring death. And then we hop into we have the tzitzits, the tzitzi. I want you to just look in this section, and it's going to start in 15 verse 37, right? Yeah, 37. And I want to just touch on this real quickly. We have a few minutes left. This word isn't just about fringes, but it's actually about, the word itself is about peering at intently. It's not about a decoration. So you've got cute little things hanging off your shirts or off your belt loops. It's about having something that you peer into, that you look deep into. And when we hear that there was healing in Yeshua's wings or his tzitzit, there was healing in that word. The tzitzit represent the word, the commandments, the Torah, and he was HaTorah, the word become flesh. So when she grabbed onto, there was healing in his wings. When the woman with the issue of blood grabbed onto the fringes of his garment, when she grabbed onto his tzitzit, what happened was that word, the truth and the life of that word flowed into her. The word became flesh. In the last days, it says that we're going to grab onto the tzitzit of the Jews and we're going to say, take me with you. Isn't that what's happening? Aren't we grabbing onto the Torah? Aren't we grabbing onto his word and saying, I need to know who you are in this. I need to walk this. This isn't about taking on a culture. It's about taking on the word, taking on his word. And it says, why do you do this? It is a commandment for all generations. It's a commandment. Okay. Why do you do this? Not so that you can have big, long ones. We hear them. We look in the New Testament. They're saying you don't wear them long. So everybody's going, woo, you got long tassels. No, that's not what you do. It's so that it says to cause you to remember zakar. And that word zakar is to bring it to the front of your face again, so you can peer to it, so you can see it, to bring it to the front of your mind. What do you use to zakar his word, his ways, who he is, his commands? And why? It says, lest we forget. So that others can see this. It's not for everyone to see it and go, oh my gosh, look what she's wearing or he's wearing. It's so you see it and you remember. Remembering that you're always in service to the king. I'm just curious, if you were given a special card or a badge from a king and you're told to keep it to remind you who you're in service to. I know if you're in the military, you have badges on your uniform. You wear certain badges because you want to say, oh yes, I'm airborne, or oh, I'm this. We do it because we identify with who we are and who we're in service to. This is a thing to keep in mind to us, what we've gone through, who we serve, what we stand for ourselves, not for other people. Maybe we need something to remind us to zakar, who we belong to, who we stand for, because it looks like they're struggling with that right now, right? They just came out of the land and they forgot who they've forgotten. And they needed something to zakar. So he's saying, I want you now to have these fringes. I want you to put these tzitzit on you so that from now on, you can remember, peer into these and know who you are and whose you are and what you stand for. And at the end, it says it wasn't just so you remember, it was so that you perform. Remember, we're to be not just hearers of the word, but we're supposed to be doers. I know a lot of us are thinking there's a lot of learning and we deny its power. Can I just encourage you this week? Maybe get yourself some tzitzit if you don't have them. Put them on the edge of your garment. Tuck them in your pants. It's for you. It's for you to remember, for you to peer at them and to see them and to know what you stand for, to know the healing and the power that stands behind his word, so that you can step in faith and not in fear, and you can remember what he's called you to, and you remember God will save.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן. תדע לך, שזו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website.